Greetings, citizens, and welcome to another edition of Flashpoint, a television program of issues and ideas. Flashpoint is brought to you by the Lawrence Debate Union, an endowed co-curricular activity at the University of Vermont that trains University of Vermont students in the arts and skills of debating and has them debate competitively, educationally, and sometimes with frivolity as well. All kinds of contestants and opponents from around the nation and now around the world. One of the other things that the Lawrence Debate Union does to promote discussion, discourse, dialogue, and debate, they all begin with a D, is to bring you Flashpoint. Flashpoint's available on local public access cable television here in the Burlington, Vermont area. It's also available for on-demand viewing. Please go to our website, debate.uvm.edu, and hit on the Flashpoint icon, and you'll be taken there for literally dozens and dozens of Flashpoint episodes. My name's Alfred C. Snider. I'm the Edwin W. Lawrence Professor of Forensics at the University of Vermont. Ain't that a mouthful, but I'm proud of it. And I'll be your facilitator for this entirely volunteer and unpaid discussion. Joining me, as always, are two members of the University of Vermont debate program, and I'm glad to have you guys back. You guys were dressed in the same clothes last week. Boy.
I don't change.
You don't change. Joe Torda. Hello, Joe. What's some political issue that's, besides the one we're about to talk about, that's on your personal agenda?
On my personal agenda, I would say the struggle in Burma right now. It's it's chilling what's happening there. And I think that it's great that it's become more in the public eye, but I would like to see, obviously, more international intervention.
Okay. And Sam Ricker, how many shows is this now for you?
I want to say 14.
Whoa, you're keeping count.
Yeah. Joe can't count that high.
Joe,
I don't have that many fingers.
And what's an issue that's catching your personal attention now besides the one we're about to talk about?
I hate to sound petty, but the legalization of marijuana and the reform of U.S. healthcare.
Okay, cool. Well, we're not going to talk about any of that because we have Flashpoint show number 351. That's right, only 49 more and we'll be at 400. I remember they said we'd never make it to 100, but hey, here we are, 351, Coalition of the Billing. You may ask, what's that about? And I would say there's a new wave of private, mercenary, military, and semi-military forces that are being developed by the United States and by other countries to be used as security surrogates to do whatever we may want, protect people or blow things up or keep order in post-Katrina New Orleans or whatever. And that's right, the word we're using for it is the biggest firm in the area, Blackwater, even though it's not very old. And the question is it appropriate to have such a privatization of security and military interests? Are there adequate protections and controls on such groups? Are they being used appropriately? Are we having more of a surge in Iraq than we may even understand because of this? And who's behind it? Are there any alternatives? All of these are things we're going to be exploring on this edition of Flashpoint. So let's go. Let's start with Blackwater. Now, we know that there are 28 different countries, different companies who did this kind of stuff, but Blackwater seems to be the number one. Who is Blackwater?
Blackwater, it's as you said, a private security company that was started up by Eric Prince, who founded it in 1997 with money he inherited from his father, Edgar Prince, the head of the Prince Automotive. Daddy Edgar helped finance Gary Bauer's Family Research Council.
Boo.
Which was a very hardcore right-wing, neoconservative,
basically
culture war.
Pop music, words of the devil, and stuff like
plot,
that. Yeah, right. And was a major GOP contributor. Prince's sister, Betsy, is married to Dick DeVos, failed candidate for governor of Michigan, and leader of the DeVos family. Founders of Amway, and major funders of Republican and conservative causes.
Wow. So you have the Family Research Council, Automotive Parts, Amway, the Republican Party, and a huge private security firm. Okay, what do they do?
Well, here's some cute, fluffy information from Blackwater themselves. Blackwater USA offers tactical training, firing range and targeting system, and security consulting under its subdivisions. Its training center, targeting systems, security counseling, and a canine unit. According to its website, Blackwater provides a spectrum of support to military, government agencies, law enforcement, and civilian entities in training, targets, and range operations as a solution provider. Their slogan is providing a new generation of capability, skills, and people to solve the spectrum of needs in the world of security. They received no-bid contracts in Iraq, Afghanistan, and post-Katrina New Orleans from the Bush administration, now totaling over $1 billion. So it sounds a lot like boot camp for anyone.
It's business.
Yeah.
It's business. And what kind of events are they involved in? Well, we usually don't do this kind of thing, but I'm going to tell a story about something that happened in Baghdad, and you'll get an idea of the kind of things that Blackwater's involved in. So here we go. Hassan Jabir al-Mayahi was in a hurry. The Iraqi lawyer had a date at appeals court, but it was midday in downtown Baghdad, and his 1995 Korean-made sedan ran into an all too familiar and aggravating problem. A convoy of sleek SUVs, armored vehicles, and a couple of Iraqi security cars had blocked off Nashur Square, snarling traffic. Al-Mayahi watched the time tick away for several minutes. Then he heard gunfire. Al-Mayahi saw foreign men screaming and shooting from the slits and turrets of the armored cars, and others firing from the ground. In the ensuing panic, Al-Mayahi says, people tried to run from their cars and were cut down by the gunfire. Drivers pressed for space to move. Cars crashed into each other. Everyone was confused. Everyone was trying to run for his life, to save his car, save his family, says Al-Mayahi. He says he saw a boy step from a minivan and get shot, his mother lunging to collapse over his body. He turned his car and made it out. Well, sort of, taking 4 bullets in the back. I was terrified. I was shouting, they have killed me, they have killed me, help me, Mayahi said from his hospital bed last week. And who was doing the shooting? Gunmen from the notorious private security company, Blackwater. And Newsweek magazine reported that Blackwater started shooting unprovoked and that they just got a little trigger happy. And it's kind of a strange situation. A newspaper editor in Iraq, Ismail Zaire, says people are afraid of contractors more than the American army. Some Iraqis call them the blonde guerrillas. Now, I think that one story or a narrative cannot tell a comprehensive tale about what's going on with private security forces in Iraq. But that, I think, was a pretty extreme, difficult situation. I wouldn't want to be there.
To say the least.
Yeah. And why is it that, I mean, and so there seems to have been a problem with the Blackwater people not being sufficiently controllable, and they get a little wild, and what's the story behind that?
Well, I mean, if you just look at the nature of the company itself, what is it? It's a private security company where you have ex-military people who are out of work and are used to killing. I mean, this is what they've been doing in the military, and now they're being paid upwards of 5 times what they would have made in a military career for this private service. And they're not subject to law. They're
not subject to law?
Any law. Not Iraqi national law, not international law, and not U.S. national law. They are not held accountable for their actions by any government.
So what happens? Let's say you're a Blackwater guy and you kind of get out of control and machine gun some people.
Well, basically,
What happens to you?
they essentially hand you your pink slip and put you on a jet out of the country, and that's it. No, no legal repercussion. You're fired.
Well, for example, Oh, never mind. I'm sorry. I'm
Well,
sorry.
another example is on Christmas Eve of last year. I believe someone who was in control of the security of the vice president of Iraq, he got into a drunken dispute with a Blackwater agent and was killed in ensuing chaos.
Yeah, and I understand that the vice president's security guard was not drinking.
No.
But the Blackwater guy was.
He was. He was drunk, and he got into a fight, and he killed this guy. And they evacuated him out of the country. And
Okay, well, anytime you have people with guns in difficult situations, stuff happens. You have friendly fire incidents. Although I hate using that friendly fire. I want to put that in quotations indicating that I'm opposed to that.
Thank you.
But stuff happens, and innocent people get killed. What's the difference between Blackwater and the kind of thing that happens in war?
Well, as I said, they're not held accountable for their actions. I mean, soldiers, they are members of a national force, and they're subject to those laws, and also international laws of war.
But it's a difficult situation. It's very dangerous, and they're protecting like U.S. officials, visiting Congress people, ambassadors and stuff like that. So somebody's got to protect them, right?
Well,
and sometimes things go wrong.
well,
I'm trying to be devil's advocate here for a minute.
Well, the notion is, why aren't the Marines doing this? I mean, why are we having this private security force, which is only one of 28? I don't even know very much about the other ones, but why aren't the Marines doing this job? I mean, this is what they're trained to do. They could sufficiently guard people with the military discipline and be held accountable for their actions, but instead, we feel the need to use this force to protect our high-level diplomats in Iraq, rather than our own military force.
Well, I think we may have hit on why we want to use Blackwater, because they're going to shoot first and ask questions later. Right? Yeah. I mean, as has been indicated by a number of different examples, and if someone is protecting you, that would be good if they shot other people and asked questions later. It might be good for your safety. It might be bad for the human race in general and any kind of moral code. But you see what I mean? I mean, they want to be. They are the toughest of the tough. They're the blonde gorillas.
Well, Blackwater is proud to say that all of their clients have remained protected under
none of their clients has ever been killed
under their watch. But apparently, the collateral damage of civilians is something that can easily be ignored.
Well, when you're driving and gunning down people with automatic weapons and not even stopping to count the bodies, it's
mistakes happen.
Yeah.
Well, they shoot about 1.5 people a week. Okay? And, I mean, that's not necessarily 1.5 bad people or good people, but they shoot 1.5 people a week. So that's not very many statistically, but if you're a security guard just guarding someone and you shoot more than 1 people a week, that's not a good sign. Any indication that these people are not, I mean, maybe they're highly trained, highly skilled, really excellent?
I mean, some of them are.
Yeah.
But this is not to degrade from their training, but they've recruited people from the Chilean military that served under Pinochet. You've got fascist soldiers under the employment of the U.S. government. And it's unbelievable. I'm stunned. I'm stunned that government money is going toward the execution, the senseless slaughter of Iraqi civilians.
And I've read a statistic that 1 in 7 Blackwater employees has been guilty of misconduct. Right, and so that seems pretty high.
Well,
for a security force.
Mm-hmm. It'd be nice to say if the example you read was an isolated incident, but clearly it's becoming more and more frequent. And if 1 in 7, are even caught for misconduct, who knows what happens that people don't find out about? The very notion that this is a growing problem, and that it's only going to get worse.
Yeah, so 1 in 7. And there are 30,000 of them?
That makes,
that's not good.
no. That's no small number either.
Right.
It's
Right,
ridiculous.
We're talking about over 4,000 of the 30,000 have been discharged from misconduct. What do you do? So what would the answer to that be? Better recruiting? But I mean, where do you find 30,000 rough and tumble security guards ready to go to Iraq? That's got to be a tough assignment.
You find them in people that were too mentally unstable to be accepted into formal militaries,
Or were discharged.
or had been discharged for probably similar conduct. Yeah, that's how you staff a security force of this nature. Is you find crazy people that are trained at using guns and are willing to use them.
Yeah, they've got to be willing to, because they're not fighting for a country. This is the coalition of the billing, right? They're being paid to do this, and it's entirely a for-profit kind of thing. And it ain't no easy thing. I mean, here's The Guardian from the UK, which I think is an excellent newspaper, by the way, and one that's excellent. And they say that Mr. Prince has reported that 30 of his guards have been killed in Iraq. So, people who go there know that it's dangerous work, right? They've lost no clients but 30 of their guards. So, it's not, I wouldn't sign up. It's not a walk in the park.
No.
And you know what you're doing. And this guy Prince is a former Navy SEAL
Right.
as well. So he's kind of into that.
Right.
Now, there are currently, according to the Asian Times, there are 170,000 U.S. troops in Iraq, and 30,000 of these security guards. Okay, so that's what, 15%
Yeah.
of the total are these security guards? Could we be having much more of a surge in Iraq than we know of?
Well, it's 30,000 American troops that are undocumented as being so because they are not under military jurisdiction. They're this private security force. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's exactly what we're dealing with.
And the notion that we need these extra 30,000 security guards to supplement, the United States military, which by any standard of measure is a formidable fighting force, it's probably, an indication of perhaps how bad the situation actually is if, things are the way they are now and we need these 30,000 security guards to still maintain this chaos. It pretty much speaks to how bleak the situation is.
And maybe they don't want the U.S. troops to doing it because the U.S. troops have carefully laid out, orders of engagement as to what they're supposed to do in different situations and how they're supposed to handle stuff. So, they're worried that Mr. Big Stuff won't be sufficiently guarded by troops because they'll do it by the book.
Because they're subject to international
the law. They
Yeah.
could be court-martialed, but all of a sudden you have, all these guys, the blonde gorillas, who can do it. So maybe the people who are being guarded actually want that. I'm sure somebody puts in an order for it.
Yeah, of
Right?
course.
And let's say you have 8 security guards. Let's say Sam's somebody important, and he has 8 security
let's
guards
just pretend
with
for a
guns,
moment.
right?
Yeah.
Right. Well, he's not so important that he needs people with guns to protect him, right yet. But okay, and so you have 8 people. Think that's enough?
I would say.
Probably.
Yeah.
Okay. Then how many people are being guarded if it takes 30,000 of them? Quite a few.
I would. Yeah.
Quite a few.
Absolutely.
So it's not just visiting ambassadors, or which is what Prince was claiming, right? Visiting, and he should say, when Congress comes to Iraq, we're there to protect you, right? When he appeared before Congress recently about this, so it goes way down. Not just the big people are supported, and the Iraqi government seems very upset about the killing of the vice president and then the shootout that took place in central Baghdad. And they're demanding that, first of all, we want all these guys out of here because they're not subject to, our laws.
Well, the Iraqi government did suspend Blackwater's license, and this was quite recently. I read this in a news feed today. It could have been yesterday, but they've taken their license away. But the question is, okay, you take away one of 28 groups. What about the other ones?
Sure. Yeah, which is the next one that's going to rise to the status that Blackwater has been at?
Yeah, I mean, Maliki declared that he didn't want the country in, and then Condoleezza Rice called him on the phone. This is from Newsweek. And Secretary of Condoleezza Rice advised him that without the security protection provided by these 30,000 guards from Blackwater and other private firms, the U.S. occupation would grind to a halt. And of course, probably Maliki's government would be gone if the U.S. was gone. And so Maliki agreed that what they would do is they'd have an investigation of the situation. But meanwhile, Congress is not sitting entirely quiet. There's been suggestion of legislation to actually, how does it work? I believe you were following that.
Yeah, it was, the story, it showed up in Friday's Times, and it was about the House passing a bill that would, it would allow companies like Blackwater to be under the jurisdiction of the American government. You know, they would be, any reports would be investigated by the FBI. But the same article also suggested that any attempts by the Iraqi government to prosecute these companies would be stifled, to say the least, by the American government, so that Maliki's attempts or anybody's attempts within the Iraqi national government to prosecute Blackwater agents or for anybody from a private security company would be stopped.
Well, that's at least consistent on the part of the U.S. government. They don't want any U.S. soldier or security person to be prosecuted by a foreign government.
Foreign agent.
I mean, that's why we don't sign on to the International Criminal Court, because we don't want to give anyone which has been accepted by almost every nation in the world, except the United States, because we refuse to have our soldiers under any jurisdiction of a foreign court. I guess my concern is if we had a troop drawdown of 25,000 troops, that might look politically good for George Bush, but might he just throw in 25,000 more Blackwaters?
Certainly, the potential is there. I mean, if these security forces have the depth to satisfy the needs of the American government, if you have enough,
if you could find 25,000 more,
right? Then absolutely.
But that might be a daunting political process to find 25,000 more, and you might be scraping the bottom of the barrel.
Well, you might the quality might go down, but the economic incentive to make 5 times a military career and do the same thing, would probably draw some pretty interesting characters. To say
If
the
1 in
least.
7 are dismissed for misconduct, and the quality goes down, I don't want to think what would happen then.
Yeah. And the costs are Democrat Henry Waxman. Oh, he's always causing trouble. So a sergeant in the U.S. Army costs the taxpayer about $50,000 or more a year, whereas a Blackwater guard costs 6 times that. So you're making $300,000. Well, at least that's what it costs.
Right.
They're probably not making that much, but they're probably making a couple $100,000
Sure.
or $150,000.
Yeah.
He says, are we paying more and getting less, he asked. He referred to an incident in Afghanistan in which 2 Blackwater pilots had crashed with the loss of 3 U.S. soldiers after flying too low, allegedly for fun.
Well, this is inexcusable. When you're flying for fun and U.S. troops get killed as well, I mean, someone has to be held accountable.
Flying for fun? What is this? It's like
I think they were buzzing.
Yeah.
I think they were buzzing people on the ground for fun, and then they ran into a hill before they could pull up.
Well, they're also sadistic.
Yeah. So. Okay. And but what do you do? Just say no security guards? What should we do?
You say no private security companies under the employment of the national government. I'd say the United States has a fairly substantial military force, and this employment of private security forces that are not subject to laws is that What we want for our future is.
Yeah, it costs 6 times as much, and they're many more times likely to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
If an individual is important enough that they feel they should have private security, they can pay for it. But when the American taxpayer pays for these no-bid contracts for wackos, protecting people, we could say no private security firms, not no security firms, because obviously there seems to be a demand for 30,000, but how many of those are necessary?
Well, if you went to Iraq, you'd probably want a bodyguard.
Damn right.
Especially if you went to Iraq as a representative of the U.S. government.
Yeah.
So I mean, you'd want some. But what I think is Marines protect U.S. embassies
all over
around the world. So, and Marines are tough. Big up the Marines. You guys, you know your business, right? And so why can't they do it? That's what I don't understand. And pay them a little extra.
Well,
it's hazard pay.
Sure.
Well, the Marines may protect U.S. diplomats, U.S. embassies. I think we're ignoring about all the businessmen that come here.
Yeah.
All the people that are within the private sector who want private security because they don't want U.S. involvement. So they are going to hire people like Blackwater voluntarily rather than use the United States military.
I think the private employment is an entirely different matter. We're talking about a government hiring these people.
Yeah, these are government contracts.
If you're a private Iraqi contractor who wants to hire, like a team of men to defend your CEOs or whatever, then that's something entirely different. That's not an appropriate job for the Marines.
Okay. All right. Now we're coming up on the end, so we don't like it. But what do you think is going to happen in the next couple of years? Will we see more of this or less of this? Congress is taking a step, and it's getting a lot of publicity. Will there be more or less Blackwater a few years from now? And we'll start with you, Sam Ricker.
I'd say there is, because even though Blackwater's getting attention, I can't name any other of the 27 or 28 groups that are there. And the notion that one of them won't just take its place and be a little more careful, be a little more secretive about what they're doing. The possibilities are endless to create this own private army, which, by the way, has its own air division.
And its own airline.
Yes.
Presidential Airways.
Well.
Okay, years from now, more or less, Joe Torda.
More. I think that privatization is something that has shown itself to be the wave of the future. And I submit, why stop with food products or technology? Privatize the military. It's a very scary trend, but I feel like it's the wave of the future.
Yeah, it sounds a little like RoboCop. Remember where the police were privatized, and now the armies will be privatized. It's a sign that corporations may be becoming more important than governments, or maybe they're becoming indistinguishable. Well, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for watching this week's edition of Flashpoint. There's a lot to think about, so don't forget, think for yourself.